The only American network television correspondent who witnessed a communist takeover of Saigon is a man named Jim Laurie. He just so happens to be part of this network. I talked with him earlier and began by asking him what stands out to him about the events of 1975.
Well, we were there for 24 days after the communist victory, which they now call Yaifong, or liberation of Saigon, and all of Vietnam. So the impressions were, of course, of this military force coming from North Vietnam, taking over the city, largely peacefully, some within the city disturbances and outbreaks of violence, but by and large, reasonably peacefully. And of course, I recall the dramatic evacuation of the last Americans and more than 30,000 Vietnamese who went with them within a 24-hour period.
I can't even imagine what that was like. And there's also a documentary airing on American television. You appeared in it talking about what you saw after the U.S. left Saigon in 1975. Let's take a listen.
My cameraman Neil Davis and I decided to stay. We saw the last helicopter leave from the roof. We then tried to scramble into the embassy ourselves. Neil got to the roof, I did not, and he saw dozens of Vietnamese just sitting on the helicopter pad on the roof of the embassy, waiting, wanting to get out, and of course no more helicopters were going to come. People were coming in and out of the buildings. Literally anything that could not be fastened down or was not fastened down was being taken away. Any souvenirs from the ambassador's office were taken away. Almost brick by brick, the embassy was being dismantled. It was ordinary looting, but more than that, I think it was just frustration and anger.
Frustration and anger.
And I think also there was a realization that the entire life that they were used to was about to change. And it did change. It didn't change all at once, but it did change. And this was interesting because I remained for a while at the old U.S. Embassy, and people were coming up to me asking for help in getting out of Vietnam. And I had to explain to them that I was not leaving Vietnam. I was staying to cover the story. So it was very painful in a way because there were so many desperate people that day. As things proceeded, we saw over the next 10 years a gigantic exodus of people from Vietnam. Over the course of 1975 to 1995, more than 2 million people fled the nation, the so-called boat people. And that didn't end until the mid-1990s.
How has Vietnam changed over the past 4 decades? You know the region better than anyone, so explain to us, in your view.
Tremendous changes. I was last in Vietnam in December, so just a few months ago. The nation is bubbling along at about 6 to 7% GDP growth per year. Massive construction everywhere across the country. The poverty level is still relatively a problem in rural areas particularly, but there is this vibrancy in Vietnam. In my judgment, second to China, it's the most vibrant nation in Asia.
And Jim, finally, one question. When you were in Vietnam, did you ever imagine the country you saw in December all these years later?
Well, I suspected that once the Vietnamese were allowed unbridled entrepreneurship and the ability to really do what they're very strong at, yes, you see the result.
Jim Laurie, fascinating conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks.